I'm just going to ask you about what you do because the reason I started my podcast is, I was a former high jumper and I've been coaching for a long time. So I've done all the jumps, a little bit of vault, but speed, agility, explosive power, those kinds of things are kind of where I live, for all the jumps. And anytime I
Yeah.
see anybody doing those things on their feed, then it always piques my interest. So I'm like the ultimate thief. Like I'm always looking at everybody else's drills, their stuff, and going, is that good? Is it bad? Do they know what they're doing? I've found people that have 200 followers doing really great stuff, and I've seen people with tons of followers that don't know what they're doing. So it's like I usually take a peek and see what's going on. So we kind of go along that, and then background for you. How did you get doing what you're doing?
Well, I started with athletics here in Italy. I'm Italian, obviously. You can hear the
Mhm.
accent. But I moved to Australia about 11 and a half years ago. And since then, I started coaching, which is great. I started coaching athletics, track and field, but I did also start coaching as a speed and agility coach, which in Sydney, there aren't too many doing what
Right.
I do. Has been pretty great. I managed to get to pretty high level of athletes. I've been
Uh-huh.
coaching the NRL, the A League. Essentially, what I do, I teach people how to run fast.
Right.
Firstly, on a straight line, and then I help them once they can move correctly on a straight line and fast enough. Then I can teach them how to change direction and move onto a non-linear speed sort of pattern. Mostly rugby and football players
Right.
on that side of my coaching. Otherwise, well, I got a lot of sprinters. I coach a lot of kids that do essentially all sorts of events in athletics.
Right.
So that's about it. And I keep coaching myself, train myself because I'm still competing, even though I'm getting older.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's one thing I haven't
Yeah,
done. But okay. So it's Cora, and what's your last name? Cora?
patriarca,
Patriarca.
patriarca.
And then I'll just ask you on there, is it I see living my best life, traveler at Macro Trips.
Uh,
What's the name of your business?
no, it's Cora Speed and Agility.
Core Speed and Agility. Okay. If I mess that up,
Yeah,
we'll just get it back going. Okay. So I've already
don't
got this
worry.
on. I'll edit that out, for the start, but then I'm just going to do a little intro and then we'll just start talking and just let it roll. Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Sounds
Awesome.
great.
All right. Well, good morning and welcome to another episode of Raise the Bar. I'm your host, Troy Haines, and I am talking with Cora Patriarca. Is that right?
Hello there.
Okay, and she is originally from Italy and is now in Australia. And welcome, Cora. How are you doing? I know it's morning for me here. It's 7:30 in the morning. You said it's evening for you there?
Yeah, because I'm not in Australia, I'm in Italy, visiting family at the moment. So it's about 4:30 in the afternoon.
Awesome, awesome. So thank you so much for taking the time and getting back to me so quickly. It's awesome. As usual,
Thank you.
Cora and I were talking just a little bit before we got going, and then I was telling her that as usual, the way that I seem to find my guests 9 times out of 10 is by my Instagram feed. So I was watching Cora's stuff, and Cora, tell our listeners what's the name of your business again over there in Sydney?
It, it's quite simple. It's Cora Speed and Agility.
Core Speed and Agility. And so you're Italian, and I'm sure we'll get to that story. What is your background in athletics in Italy when you were growing up? How did you learn all this stuff about speed and agility?
I started very early. I was in primary school. I had a great physical education teacher that got us into athletics. And since then, I never stopped. I really loved it. I've been doing heptathlon
Hmm.
pretty much ever since. Obviously, when you're a kid, there are a little less events, but yeah, eventually I always been into the multi events,
Uh-huh.
and that's why I feel like I'm an okay coach for athletics because I got a bit of competence in all the events,
Right.
most of the events at least.
Right, right. Well, that seems to be a trend here in the US right now. I've been noticing that a lot of the jump coaches that are preferred to be hired are the multi-event athletes for a couple of reasons. Number one, they assume that since they're pretty good athletes that they have a working knowledge and they can help their jumps guys, which usually you'd probably be okay there. But I think also just
Thanks.
they can wear a lot of hats, right? Like you are. You can help all over the place. And what most college staffs over here have going for them that I've seen is basically there's not a lot of money. So if you're going to be coaching track and field here in the U.S., I don't know, you have to have another job. Really,
Oh yeah,
it's hard to exist
it's
just on what
it's
they're.
exactly the same in Australia,
Mhm.
absolutely. But the good thing is there are so many private colleges that you can have a lot of gigs around, and again, same as they do prefer people like me that can kind of coach everything.
Right?
So
Yeah,
they just hire one person and
yeah.
not 10.
So you're wearing a
Yeah,
lot of different hats and covering all the bases for them for sure. So
exactly.
as a heptathlete now, the other real thing that I have that it's a motivation for me, a desire, and number one, I love to promote track and field. When I can. I was a track and field athlete here at UCLA, and I retired like way back in the dark ages. 1986 was my senior year at UCLA, so it's coming up on 40 years. And all that time, I really, really desperately wanted to go to the Olympics. Now, to go to the Olympics, you got to go through the Olympic trials, and I wasn't quite good enough even to get there. So, my roommate and I used to sit up late at night my freshman year talking about, what do we want to do, our dreams, and, we're going to go, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to get my face on the cover of Wheaties box, like Bruce Jenner. And, it just never panned out. But I just love the drama, the pageantry of all those things. So I'm always also looking A to promote and B for those people that are, levels and levels up. I had the honor of competing against a couple guys that were, unbelievably good. I actually got to jump against Sotomayor from Cuba one time. He came over here to the US and right after he broke the world record. And I just they were holding the meet at UCLA. And since I was a UCLA alum, they're like, yeah, you can jump in it. And I was just like, oh my God, this is so great. I
Wow.
still have the little clipping. I came in sixth. There's Sotomayor and there's all these other guys. There's me. And I made the opening height. And that was enough to get me sixth place. So I was like, oh, this is so great. But, rubbing elbows with greatness. So as far as you go over there, number one, I want to just find out about your athletic history. Like, how far did you get? How long did you have similar dreams? And then have you started coaching people with that kind of levels in their mind?
I mean, let's be honest, I never been as good as probably you been in heptathlon at the time when I was competing. I was always between the first three or four in Italy.
Hmm.
So at that level,
Right.
never got first, but I had a third place, I had a fourth place at the nationals. Um, that obviously got me really motivated for the years coming. But at the same time, I never been thinking, oh my God, I'm gonna be able to go one day to the Olympics. No.
Right.
At the same time, though, I feel like my motivation has always been enough for me to keep me going. I never stopped training. I never stopped competing, really, because as soon as I moved to Australia, I joined a club. I had to figure out how it worked there because obviously each country is different. But yeah, joined the club, started competing, became a master because in Australia, very luckily, you become a master at 30.
Okay.
So you get the chance to compete with your age group, which is very much motivating. I have to say, if I had to compete only with opens, it would be hard
Yeah.
because competing, I'm 34 now, and competing with a 20 years old girl,
Yeah.
them. It's hard. While if I have to compete with, my 30 to 35 years old category, where it makes sense. It
Right.
gives me a bit more of that motivation that I need to keep going, keep training and competing. Yeah. And obviously in that category, I got really good in Australia well, couple of years ago, because now it's been 2 years of traveling and not competing
Right.
and training much. But 2 years ago, I got 7 medals at the nationals in Australia.
Wow. That's
So
awesome.
still really good, obviously in that master category.
Right. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So over there in your training, I've seen it again as I went through your feed. I did see a lot of different
Hmm.
things. So that led me to the conclusion. I'm like, oh, here's somebody doing long jump. Oh, this looks like triple. Oh, this looks like high jump. I'm like, so she's doing a little bit of everything. Do you have some athletes over there that you're training that you think may have that kind of capability in them that are going to step up to high levels?
I think so. There are a few really good kids that
Mhm.
they do show lots of talent. The question is always the same. They're gonna keep going.
Yeah.
Uh, they're gonna endure all those years that they need to endure in order to get
Right.
to that point. Not sure. I do have the feeling that in Australia as well, it's all about how pushy the parents are.
Right.
Sometimes parents can be overwhelming, pushy,
Right.
and the kids they just can't keep up with what the parents want from them. Other times, parents are good enough that they're not, they're not pushing those kids in a top
Unrealistic.
level.
Yeah.
It's just they need to find a good balance, and I think it all comes to that. So I have the feeling that some of the kids that I've been coaching, they have great potentials, but we'll see.
So this just popped in my head, but when you're training them, do they once they get to a certain age, it's taken me a while to figure this out because here in the US, we have you've got your grassroots, you got kids from all ages. I mean, as soon as they can run without falling down, I'm sure they can start competing. So they got these young kids things, and they got one of those, for the
Hmm.
javelins, they got like this toy javelin that they throw. It's kind
Yeah,
of fun watching them,
Vortex.
and but it's
Hmm.
fun watching them, and they're growing up, they're having fun and doing whatever, and then you keep going. Once you get through in our junior high school, which is like in your early teens a
Hmm.
lot of almost lack of organization. The junior highs don't compete. You can if you're on a club, but there's not a lot of meets. And then you got to wait for the summer, and then they can do Junior Olympics. Over here, I don't know if we even do the unders that I notice everybody else does, like under 12, under 14, under 16, under
Hmm.
18, 20. I see those under 20 champ, under 20 this. So as I'm following all these jumpers around the world, someone will say, "Oh, I'm the under 20 champ," and I'm like, "Well, what does that mean?" I'm the under 20 champ in my country. I'm the under 20 champ in Europe. I'm the under,
Yeah.
there's so many different things you could be the under 20 champ of, but it's like I'm still learning that system. So like we go through once they get out of that, then they go into high school. Now they've got structure here. So they can go 4 years, they can go to their own state finals, but we've got 50 states. So you got 50 different states with their own, things set up. And then once they get through that, if they're going to go on, they're going to go to a college somewhere. And then you've got NC2As, Division One, Division Two, Division Three, all kinds of other levels below that, smaller colleges, blah, blah, blah. And then my question is now for your athletes, once they get through the under 20 kind of stuff, are they, I don't know how the schools work over there. Like, are there big colleges? Do you lose some of those athletes come over here? Like, how's that work?
Yeah, no, exactly. Not really. We don't have colleges that
Hmm.
really run a great program of athletics. Essentially, they go through athletics with their schools until they finish high school, which is year 12. At
Hmm.
least that's how they call it when they're 18 years old,
Right.
essentially. And then they go to uni, and universities have teams, and you can be part, even though you're not a uni, you can be part of that team. myself, for example, I was part of a university team, UTS. Um, but I mean, it's all up to them to get their training going. They
Right.
need to train outside the university. They need to have their own coach. They need to figure it out, and then they only compete using the T-shirt of the universities.
Mhm.
Really, nothing else. There is not a well-organized system once they go to uni,
Yeah.
which is a shame. If they do go to private schools before that, so from year 1 to year 12, essentially until they're 18, then private schools, some have incredibly good organized systems, sports systems, so
Right.
really good coaches, but it all depends how expensive is that school.
Right. Right.
If they go to really good private schools, then they have many chances to do great and compete a lot. Whenever you find kids that don't go to private schools,
Yeah.
not the same story. They have to do their own training outside school.
Right.
The other good thing in Australia, I feel that athletics is considered a winter sport for some reason. So in school, they do compete, they train and compete athletics during winter, which
Hmm.
is your summer, by the way.
Right.
Um, while outside school is obviously a summer sport,
Yeah.
athletics. So kids eventually end up competing all year round, which is a really cool thing if you think about it. It gets a bit complicated when they get a little older and you do want to periodize a
Hmm.
program, and it becomes hard because there is no off season,
Right.
essentially. They just keep training and keep competing, and you have to figure things out on the way
Right.
because they have competition all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm. The other one other brief question about the athletics, the way that it works there in Sydney is over here, one of the reasons track and field I feel is so just talking with Tony Holler 6 months ago now, and he was telling me he goes, as you know, he was telling me this. He goes, as you know, track and field is like the redheaded stepchild of all the sports. And I was like, I go, yeah, I mean, here in the US, you got football, basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, volleyball, you got tennis, golf. All these sports make more money, than track and field. Track and field is noticed once every 4 years. Other than that, for the average sports person, I would be willing to bet they don't know much about it at all. And I can readily admit that I don't know much more because if I'm following anybody, I tend to follow the jumpers. And then I might hear a little bit about some others, but I'm not usually paying attention. I'm like focused on what my guys are doing and everything else. So it's like, it's just hard over here. And we don't have the same sports system you guys have over there. Where are you guys losing your track athletes to? What sports do they do if they're not doing track? Do they play rugby? Do they play Australian rules football?
Rugby,
Yeah.
a rugby league, our NRL, is the best paid
Hmm.
sport in the nation, together with AFL, with the Australian Football League. Um, but yeah, essentially the boys really try hard to get into NRL because they
Right.
can get paid for it. Soccer, football is getting better. In the
Hmm.
last 2 or 3 years, got better, got more popular.
Hmm.
Before, it wasn't really. Australians are not that great. And swimming is a big one in Australia.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and the actual training for swimming, it's tough. It's a lot of hours of training. So many times kids they have to make a choice. They're
Right.
gonna train for swimming or they're gonna train for something else. And
Right.
when they become really good at swimming, then they just focus on that. So I feel that rugby would be the first one, swimming,
Hmm.
followed by swimming. Yes, second
Yeah.
one for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but as you said, same there, same in Australia. No money in track and
Yeah.
field.
No money.
No, not at all. You
Yeah.
have to pay a lot to be able to train, You need to pay the entrance to the track if you
Yeah.
want to train. You need to pay a coach. Coaches can be very expensive. You need to pay for registration every year for the
Right.
club. You need to register and pay for each competition you do.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money
Right.
eventually. So is either your passion or you think
Yeah.
about it.
Uh,
Uh,
yeah, it's a travesty. I think about that now. Thinking back to those days, talking with my roommate, like I would have liked somebody to just slap me and go, "Okay, you realize, number one, your dreams are noble and everything, but at the tip of the iceberg, not even the people that are really, really good are making, as much money as the other sports. So, and those the numbers are smaller and there's way more competition for that. So it's like, all right. So off of that topic, now once you got started, Cora, your background is in athletics. When you went to school, did you learn anything else? Like I went to UCLA and I could have studied anything, but with my background, I actually did jump in and started learning it's kinesiology. So I got a kinesiology degree and I ended up getting a master's in kinesiology from another local school, and that was exercise science. So some of the things that I learned translate to what we're doing out there on the track. Did you have any special schooling that you did, or is your stuff all?
yeah, look, in Italy, I wasn't thinking of my future. And I actually thought, I'm doing so much sport already. Why studying sport as well?
Mhm.
Big mistake. But as soon as I got to Australia, then I did study. Um, I became a personal trainer because in Australia you need those certificates to become a personal trainer. That really helped. Um, After that, I did study strength and conditioning. I got my certificate in strength and conditioning. It's called ASCA in Australia. Um, but yeah, I got my massage therapy certificate. I kind of like accumulated a few certificates and diplomas in that fitness and sport area. But I do feel that the best teaching for me has been just getting a lot of experience following other coaches.
Mhm.
I've been taken into this group of coaches that are top in Sydney. My coach, Roger Fabri, is called. You maybe heard of him. Used to be my coach. I started working with him, and he taught me a lot. He's really, really a good coach for everything that is speed and agility, especially when it comes to rugby
Right.
players. And I feel that most of my knowledge comes from him. And eventually, then afterwards, I've been coaching for and coach with other coaches that teach me a lot.
Mhm. So this is, the main thing that comes out after all this, and I'm thinking when I see your stuff, I'm like training. My number one thing, most people would agree. I was a high jumper, so I have more uh, training that I've done with high jumpers. It doesn't mean I haven't worked with long and triple. I never once triple jumped in my life. I've done a lot of the drills, but I didn't ever actually do the event and competition. Now I started as a long jumper, but again, once for whatever reason, when I went over the high jump, it was like that's what I was really good at. And everybody just kind of shifted their focus for me. Like I tell my athletes sometimes, I go, you guys don't realize how good of an athlete you are. I said, when I was at Millikan High School, when I was at UCLA, and any time after, there was never anybody going, you know what? You should try doing these other events. Like nobody was telling me I should also long jump or I should also pole vault. They're like, oh, you should stay with a high jump. That's that's what you do best. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. Now, when I'm looking at it, I'm going, okay, I broke it down into straight line approach, curve, and then jump, flight, and land. You
Mm-hmm.
immediately started telling me about when you train your sprinters, you teach them how to run in a straight line, and then you
Straight first.
teach them how to run on a curve, right? And I told my kids
Yeah.
that I go, look, running in a straight line is pretty easy, for some. Now I've got kids I teach high school PE, and there's some kids that can barely run in a straight line. So they're the
Exactly.
non-athletes, right? So like, okay, it's not as easy as all that, but yeah, if you can run a straight line, I'll say you're beginning of an athlete. Then teaching them how to run on a curve is like it causes me mini nightmares. I'm pulling my hair out. I'm like, how hard can this be?
Mm.
But I'm like amazed because I actually remember all these times that I've been watching and competing at both high school and college levels that there are way more 100-meter runners than there are 200-meter runners. And I go, now why do you
100%.
think that is? It's because they've got to run a curve. It's like
Hmm.
it's hard to run fast and keep your technique and learn how to lean, to your left. So yeah,
Yeah.
what do you do with that? I mean, when you're teaching your techniques, first actually it'd be easier to ask you when you're teaching your running technique, what do you teach them to do?
Look, exactly as you're saying, straight line first. They need to learn how to run on a straight line. And well, mostly we go through lots of drills that do replicate the mechanics, the usual A, B, C, skip,
Right.
straight legs, back, cycling, kick, high knee. Those are the
Staple.
core
Yeah.
staple drills. They need to know how to do it well. They're just four or five, not many,
Right.
but they need to know how to do them well. As soon as they can do the drills normally, they can run a little better already. I do focus a lot on arms. I want those arms to move well.
Right.
I found that many athletes, they just cross over. They have too much movement going on their upper body. That is just a nightmare. They're not going to be able to run well and fast on a straight line if there's so much movement happening on their
Right.
upper body. So I do focus a lot on their arm movement and the mechanics. And then I do add lots of other drills, such as wickets. I
Right.
use a lot my wickets. I use a lot sleds. When they get a little stronger, they can already run a little better
Hmm.
because that teaches them how to at least accelerate well. And then eventually, with the wickets, you can do acceleration wickets, but you can also use the wickets in order to work on that, cadence and
Right.
rhythm. As soon as they can handle all these, then we start moving sideways. Um, Now, it's not easy. Normally, if they're track athletes, I kind of really just put them on a track,
Right.
and I manage to just get them going on that one side. No
Yeah.
point in coaching, running, turning right.
Right.
They're not gonna do it unless they are high jumpers, obviously,
Yes.
and they jump
Right.
on the right. Other than that, you just have to build drills that they're gonna constrict them into that band.
Yeah.
I used wickets on a band
Hmm.
that I found it really helpful. I get them to run with sticks,
Yeah.
so that we just focus on the lower body and they don't have to worry too much on how they move their arms. I get them to run very soft bands at first, and then we get them tighter and
Right.
tighter.
Yeah.
When I coach some of the high jumpers, we do use the football fields, the center of the football
Yeah.
field, that circle, and we get them to just run,
Yeah.
keeping those knees high, over and over around the circle, essentially.
Right.
Um, yeah, pretty much. That's
Sounds
how it
yes.
works.
Sounds similar. We do the same thing here. I'm really fortunate at the school that I work at has the big emblem, which is about I think it's 10 yards in radius. So like
Hmm.
20 yards in diameter. So it's a really big circle to start with, but then there's letters around there. So I'm like, well, we could run the outside circle, you could run around the letters, either the top side of the letters or the smaller side of the letters. So there's already like three. There's actually three or four circles in our
That's it,
emblem
perfect.
itself. So I'm like, oh, this is great because I can go wide, like you said. I start them on the widest one because it's easiest, and then keep getting them tighter. And then, yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that too, because the speed agility stuff that I see, I love it, but I'm like, I want to get them to be quicker, but I make a distinction because it's weird in track and field, like you said, it's basically speed, straight lines, maybe there's a little curve. High jump, long jump, triple jump, pole vaulters, hurdlers, even javelin throwers, I think have to have some agility and ability to control stride length as it, because if you're 6'6" and you're running against someone who's 5'3" in the high hurdles, you're going to see some differences in stride lengths and how they attack certain things. For someone who's 6'6", they might have to take shorter than normal steps, maybe in the hurdle. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's so many variables, but it's like um, the speed agility stuff I find wonderful, but at the same time, I'm like, where's the application? For me, I think of the quick stuff as like neuromuscular stimulation and coordination, which are always valuable. Like I said, I love what you said about the arms. Oh my gosh, I've got kids that are just when they're running, their arms are like flailing around. I said, look. You can't have your arms doing something different every time. I mean, they're running up to the high jump bar, and sometimes they gather both arms behind them. Sometimes one's in front and across, and they're throwing it backwards and sideways as they go up. I'm like, no, 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 no. Drive your arms straight up. Reach them back behind you.
Yeah.
I'll tell them, picture you're running down a corridor that's like a quarter inch wider than you are, and that you don't want to hit anything with your arms. Like, nothing's out here flailing around. I go, you want to be
Yeah,
clean,
100%.
going north and south. Let's go. Let's not wander. Like you said, because I'm picturing arm movements like this. Now I got to get my core involved to keep me from wobbling. And yeah, it's a nightmare.
Of
Teaching
course.
better,
It
teaching kids
does
everyone.
look, as soon as they get a little older, it does help that they start going to the gym
Yes.
because that core strength that they're gonna build in the gym, it'll help a lot.
Hmm.
They're gonna build strength in their upper back, and core, and that's gonna really help to
Yeah.
avoid all that movement happening on the upper
Yeah.
body.
Control.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So you brought up another interesting point, Cora. In your training, you mentioned periodization. Some
Mm.
some of our listeners may not understand that as far as it goes, or they may have a better understanding of it just in the idea of training or peaking for training. But explain a little bit, maybe if you could, what do you do when you're doing periodization of training? What is it that you actually mean? Like how many weeks do you usually do? And inside of that, you're talking weights, I'm assuming, and some plyos, and give us a little overview of what you
Look, yeah, it depends on how much time we do have with each athlete. So it's very individual, the periodization. Normally, with a normal track and field athlete that's going to compete only in summer, let's say, you do have the really good thing that it is a long, long off season.
right,
And during this off season, you can do so much. Normally, there is a general preparation phase, GP. Um, During this phase, you start building up slowly. You add volume more than intensity. You really just try to add volume. You get to the point that you reach a good amount of volume at this point, which volume, I mean, it means lots of repetitions, getting longer. At this point, you can cut the distance, cut the amount of repetitions, but increase the intensity.
right,
So we want them to start sprinting faster. When it comes to jumping, same story, like during the GP phase, you build up, you do a lot of jumping, you do a lot of drills, lots of exercises, but the intensity is going to stay low until they are ready to, peak a little higher with the intensity and then start harder type
right,
of plyometrics, more actual jumping. We wouldn't do full run ups until they are ready to do a
right,
full run up,
right,
you know. And then at that point, depending on who you're coaching and what they are preparing for, there's a lactic phase, which
Right.
is the one that everybody hates. Um, we need to build up lactic acid intolerance or
Uh-huh.
tolerance, really, more the intolerance. Um, yeah, we need high intensity for that. Once the lactic phase is done, you build up enough intensity, enough volume. At that point, you start getting into the pre-season. So you have to work a lot more on the actual event that you're preparing.
Right.
So shortening up the repetitions, getting to your athletes to do repetitions that do resemble what they're gonna compete in. If they're jumpers, get them to jump, do a full run up, do some proper jumps.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So what I hear is the same thing. So I know backgrounds aside, we're coming at it from the same angle, which what I was taught either, like you said, both learned because I was trained that way, and then also, going through some things where you're required for your, I think USA track and field over here for a level one, they brought that up in their training, but they didn't really make you master it like somebody else would. But the idea that I get is the idea of the pyramid, right, with the wide base and the pointed peak at the top. And for me, that model holds through on everything from, like you said, at the base of the pyramid, you got a lot of reps, low intensity. As you go up, you start getting less reps, but more intensity, right? So you're going from, say, in the weight room, 5 sets of 8, 4 sets of 12, kinds of reps. And then as you go up, all of a sudden it's, 5 sets of 5 or 5 sets of 6 or something like that. And then you're starting to get like 3 sets of 3 and, 3, 2, 1s and, that kind of stuff and the weights are going up and up and up. And the intensity is going up because you're lifting so much. Obviously, it's kind of governed by the fact that if we could do 5 sets of 8 with 20 or say 100 pounds on squats or something, and then all of a sudden you get up where you could do your 3 sets of 3. If you could do that with 400 pounds, you go, okay, that's really good. Why can't I do the 5 sets of 8 with that? And it's like, well, you can't. Those are 1 rep max or whatever. So some of it's kind of just the way I think our physiology and the way that works, but it's like that works on all fronts, right? So lifting,
yeah.
sprinting, whatever you're training for, you start with a wide base and more general, right? And then
Yeah,
take
exactly.
it more
That's the
specific.
important part as well. You need to get more specific.
Yeah,
The specificity needs to increase with the going off the periodization towards your competition.
right,
So when at the start you don't really do anything that specific to that event, particular event that you're competing in. Later on during your pre-season, you need to be more specific. You need to do things that really are,
right.
related to the event you're going to compete in. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I feel that in the gym, it translates in the gym as well. When at the start of the periodization, you sort of doing all sorts of exercises because you need to build a bit of hypertrophy, a bit of strength. Then you go towards power and exercise that really replicates the mechanics and they
mhm.
get more specific. Yeah.
Yeah. So general in your lifting, general in your sprinting, general in your plyos, general even as far as the athleticism required for your event, and then more and more specific. I'm always teaching the kids like you get more specific where, I mean, finally the lifts to me at the end of the year for high jump need to be as similar to the jumping itself. Like I even moved a couple years ago, I started experimenting with getting away from two-legged lifts at the end, like squats and cleans and all those things. I love them.
Yeah.
But
100%. But
in track and field, in the high jump,
mhm,
they run on single leg strides the whole way and then jump off of one
of
leg.
course.
So
Of
now,
course.
yeah, I start
Split
getting
squats,
them,
lunges.
yeah, and single leg stuff.
Yeah.
Even if you're doing
Hmm.
squat, do like a goblet squat on one leg instead of two, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, those exercises will improve a lot their core stability and their coordination,
Mhm.
and they do translate way better in on the track,
And you're
of
not going to
course.
be able to do, you would think, I haven't done any study on this yet. I got to do some reading and then maybe experimenting my own. But you think, well, if I can do a squat with 200 pounds, how much can I squat with one leg? You would think, oh, well, it's got to be 100 pounds. Maybe it's a little bit less because there's a little, they can work together a little better, maybe support each other a little bit more when you're doing two, or maybe for one reason, maybe one leg does 120 and the other one does 80. Like what's going
For
on there?
sure, but in my experience, many track athletes they do great with unilateral exercises
Mhm.
because they might not be as strong as a lifter, a power lifter on a squat or a deadlift, but they do have that core stability, that coordination that allows them to do really well and quite heavy on those unilateral exercises.
Yeah,
So, you ask a bodybuilder
yeah,
to do a split squat or a lunge, they're not going to be as good as most of
right,
the track athletes.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
to get muscles to lengthen, it's different, right? Bodybuilders are trying to thicken up and shorten up a lot of times, and they can't really move, which is one of the
100%.
disadvantages, right? I have a young Paralympian he's trying to get into the Olympics. He's was really, really muscular, strong. And we were working the high jump, and I'm like, hey, I want you to reach your arms behind you and drive them up over your head. And he would always swing his arms out to the side and swing them up kind of in front of him this way. And his arms would come up, but
Yeah,
reach behind the side, give me this arm, give me the other arm. And I reached back, and that
for
was it.
sure.
Like I couldn't move him. I'm like, dude, we got to get you some flexibility and a little bit of
Yeah,
drop size here.
yeah, working on mobility, 100%.
Yeah.
Without
Oh,
mobility, it's pretty tough.
yeah. So that's another trend. I don't know if you've noticed on Instagram, I've seen a proliferation. I think sometimes I keep forgetting that everybody's trying to make money off you. So like the stuff that I watch is the stuff that keeps coming my way, right? It kind of the algorithms start figuring out what it is that you want to see.
Sure,
So I'm always
for
and the
sure.
hashtags. So the hashtags that I put in there, I'm always seeing jumping, sprinting, lifting, plyos, speed.
Clearly.
They're all coming my way. And then, a lot of stuff now. I saw this guy 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know if you've seen him over there, the knees over toes guy. I don't know if you've watched any of his stuff.
Mm,
Recovery stuff. He had a ACL tear. His name's Ben Patrick, I think, and he blew out one of his ACLs, and through his rehab was trained to do full range of motion, slow controlled, so he can do it's amazing when you watch some of the stuff he does. He does a lot of backwards walking, backwards sleds, one-legged squats, but full range. You can go all the way down, all the way back up. Now, hard to
mhm.
do right at the start, but you got to, incrementally build all that kinds of stuff. So I see a lot of that. Now, in what you're doing over there, I know flexibility is important, and what my question for you is the flexibility and range of motion and joint stability. What do you do to attack those issues over there?
That's the thing. You just said it. There is mobility, flexibility, which I agree, you do need it. Mostly mobility more than flexibility, because
Mhm.
when you start talking about flexibility, it's mostly about the length of the muscles. We do kind of not like the flexibility part of the training when you are coaching somebody that is a sprinter, is a powerful athlete, because those muscles that long, they're not going to be able to contract that fast without eventually
Right.
break there. So it's much better to think about mobility than flexibility, in my opinion. You
Mhm.
want your athletes to have a good mobility. They need to be able to move freely with a good range of motion, but you don't want those muscles to eventually just be long and useless.
Yeah.
Um, what is really, really important, in my opinion, is stability. Your athletes, they need to work on stability. There are many ways to do it. There are very simple drills that you can use, just walking on your tippy toes,
Right.
walking on your heels, backward, sideways. And then you can get a little bit more advance and start using plyometrics
Hmm.
because we want athletes to have some sort of stiffness in their joints, especially the ankles.
Right.
Okay. Um, so when it comes to coaching a good athlete and you want to progress this athlete to a certain level, it's super, super important for them to have great stiffness in their ankles because that's how they're going to maintain a position
Right.
of the joints when they land. Their contact time on the ground is going to be minimal if they have good, stiff, strong ankles.
Right.
It's not going to happen if they're weak. They don't have that stability in their joints. They're just going to collapse at every step. They're not
Right.
going to be able to push off the ground fast.
Yeah.
So I
Interesting.
found that that's the most important
Yeah.
part of the training.
Do you do a lot of for that and here talking, sprint stuff and plyos and all that? Do you guys do a lot of barefoot work?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. At the start of the session or at the end of the session.
Hmm.
Um, Lots of walking up on the toes, walking on the toes, lifting the
Hmm.
toes up while walking, just heel to toe, all the
Right.
sorts of movements. Um, and then also quite a lot of jumping, especially in the sand pit.
Right.
I really enjoy getting the athletes to be barefoot and just do lots of small jumps,
Right.
bilateral, unilateral jumps in the sand. It really helps with strengthening up those ankles.
How about
Yeah.
you said unilateral and all that stuff too. One thing I've been trying to do with my high jumpers is resist the force just of their own bodies running towards the bar. I tell them in some ways the fact that we're running straight at the bar is to our detriment simply because we're creating a tremendous amount of force that's going horizontally instead of vertically. So I'm like, we got to lean back, right? Do all that stuff. And I'm like, my vision is everything needs to go the other way. So every limb, every force generated needs to be either upward or away because up and towards doesn't work. Any slight bit towards, like I'm trying to get even their arms instead. If the bar is over here, I want to get their arm
Hmm.
the other way. I want to get their knee drive
Yep.
from the other way. And I've even come to think that I need to get the leg that they're jumping off of to try to jump back and a little bit to the left. So I'm like, we've been doing a lot of reverse. Like I've seen a lot of people do lateral plyos. I don't I don't know if you've seen
Yeah,
Sison training guard.
I found them really useful
Hmm.
because you need to be able to land and hold a position going
Right.
sideways.
Yeah.
So let's say you got a little hurdle, you can jump over the hurdle or from a box down onto the ground
Right.
laterally, and you need to hold the position, and that is gonna really help that stiffness
Right.
moving sideways, 100%. And then progressing, you can add more jumps in a
Right.
row, so that they do really need to keep their body straight, but
Yeah.
avoiding to fall over on one
Hmm.
side. Yeah, I found them really useful,
Um,
as well as with those rugby and football
sure.
players that do need to change direction. That
Sure.
it's a must. When you change direction, you need to have that
Yeah.
control.
So
Yeah.
it's funny because that's a layer of complexity that we've just added because, we're talking about the pyramid. And then I'm like, yeah, I want all of that. And I've started going even because the first lateral type of jumps that I've seen the most of is jumping medially, like towards my center. So if I'm planting my right foot, I tend to jump left. If I'm planting my left foot, I tend to jump right. But the thing that I've noticed is like for me, when I was a left-footed high jumper, so when I come
Mhm.
around, I put my left foot on the ground, but I'm getting pulled this way, and I don't want to push right. I want to push left. And that's one thing I haven't seen a lot of because it's almost like cutting off the wrong foot. Like if you want to change directions quickly to go left, you don't put your left foot on the ground to go left. You put your right foot on the ground and swing your weight that way. But if
100%.
I'm being asked to use the wrong leg in essence to do that work. So I'm trying to get my guys. The only guy I've seen doing this a lot is Dario. If you've seen Dario Sison training, he's another guy that blew out an ACL and through his rehab discovered, a gift and studied under someone that he learned a lot from, and now he's really applying a lot of lower leg plyometric stuff. But he does a lot of just you see him on one leg and he's going forward, back, then sideways over here. So he's changing directions, doing a lot of single leg stuff, but it's never just one direction, and then
Hmm.
even seen some people go backwards. I like jumping off
Yeah,
the box and jumping back up onto the box simply because
yeah,
it doesn't seem like we're usually doing that. We're usually going forward, and then you're stressing the tendons and the ligaments, like you said, joint stability in all directions. It's got to be beneficial. And if you need to stop yourself
100%.
and go up, then you have to actually counterbalance and do some work in the other direction.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that plyometrics can really be useful in all sort of direction. So you need to think that you need to be at a certain level of fitness and experience to be asking your athlete to start moving sideways or backward while doing a plyometric drill. They need,
Absolutely.
same as sprinting, they need to learn how to do it properly forward first, and then
Yeah.
when they're
Yeah.
doing it properly on that forward direction, then you can add those other
Yeah.
drills.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to progress plyometrics. That's really important. Otherwise, it's just gonna get injured.
Right, right. Well, that's the huge worry, right? So there's training, then there's overtraining, and then there's something that they're simply not ready for. So you got to have some sense for that over time. This question, I don't know. For me, when I tell my kids this, right? Sprinting to me is very, very plyometric, very explosive. I tell them these stories. I go, look, you've got these NFL linemen, 350 pound guys. You've got defensive linemen in the NFL that can run like a 4.6 40-yard dash. And they're like, well, how can someone that big move that fast? I said, well, they can squat two times their own body weight. I'm like, if you look
It's
at
power.
The Hulk moves fast, but the Hulk isn't a sprinter, but he's so strong that he just pushes really hard. So I'm like, if you can push, you don't have to have fantastic technique. You just have to be able to push at what my goal has always been two times your own body weight. If you could squat twice your own body weight, I'm like, you should be able to start moving quicker. I mean, I went from I make fun. I tell the kids I was literally like Tom Brady, the NFL quarterback at the combine. They showed him running when he came out of Michigan. He's like a 5'2" 40, terrible, and no musculature in his upper chest, and he's just and they have those famous pictures. Now Tom totally remade himself in 20 years, greatest quarterback ever. But when he came out of college, he only had those skills, and I remember thinking, man, when I was in high school, I ran like a 5 flat 40, and the guys would make fun of me. They're like, aren't you on the track team? And I'm like, I'm a high jumper, I'm not a sprinter. But it's like when I got to UCLA and I did squats at 400 pounds, my 40 time dropped to like 4.6,
Changes.
7. So it's like it wasn't really, really fast, but it was a lot faster than it was. So I learned that explosiveness translated onto speed. So there we're getting into
Yeah.
whole strength and then that conversion of the strength. So which one is it, do you think, Cora, that's more important? Is it just the raw power, or do I need to take that power and kind of run it through the plyometric explosiveness to turn it into speed?
No, you need to turn it into speed. There are a lot of really strong, powerful people, but they still wouldn't be able to run that fast. They might be really good in the first 15, 20 meters,
Right.
and then they fall apart because
Yeah.
they don't know how to move, they don't know how to hold their body while sprinting. So you do need to have a process. You need to work hard in the gym. You need to build power. You need to build
Yeah.
hypertrophy, then strength, then power progressively. And then when you do have that great power, in the meantime, you're working on the track so that you know how to run, you know how to move well, and you can hold that strength, that power for a long time, at least for 100 meters, if you're running 100. Because seriously, the first 20, 30 meters, it's a lot about power. But then you need to have that strength endurance so
Right.
that you can actually finish the race. So then there must be a lot of work done in both fields.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
I know we're getting close to your hour. I wanted to ask you, what do you see coming up for yourself with this business? You said you took a couple years off to travel. Now you're back in Sydney doing what you do. You're still training
I'm
self.
actually going to be going to Canada
Are you?
now. Yeah, I got a couple of years coming into Canada,
Okay.
work visa. Yeah.
So you're going to move your
So
business up there?
I think so. Yes,
Uh,
I hope so. Yeah, that's the idea. Exactly. That's why I was interrupting you because not going back to Sydney is going to change a lot. I want to try and build up a bit of my business over to Canada. Hopefully, it's going to be more track and field than field sports.
right,
But at the same time, I do like to coach rugby players, football players. It adds up that change of direction that you
right,
don't have in track and field.
right.
So a good mix would be great.
Awesome. Well, so in Canada, then when you're there, are you starting from scratch? Do you know anybody in Canada? Or are you
100%.
just literally going over there and forging a new business?
Exactly. Not knowing anybody there. So it's going to
Wow,
be start from zero.
that's
Yes.
amazing. That's is it just because of Canada itself? Did you travel there and found that you really liked it over there, or what prompted the move from Sydney to Canada? To challenge?
Yeah, I would say that I just want to have a new experience. I want to see how life is in a different country, which they told us it's quite similar to Australia in different aspects, but I really want to see how it is working, living and working there.
Uh-huh.
Just get a new experience and see how it goes. I might love
Awesome.
it so much that I'm gonna stay forever in Canada. I might go back to Australia
Right.
and just continue over there.
Okay. Are you going to leave your business there with you? Or are you like packing it up and taking everything with you? Or are you going to put somebody in control, let it still run?
No, I decided not to leave anybody there because my clients were training with me because of me.
Right.
Um, I still have, after 2 years of traveling and not working, I still have my ex-clients texting me and calling and asking if I could please go back
Right.
because they can't really find anybody that coaches their kids
Yeah.
or themselves. Like,
Last question before we let you go, Cora. Do you do any virtual work? Because I would think if you do have those same clients that are still going to want to stay in touch with you, they're probably going to track you down in Canada, right? Say, can we still get some stuff done? So,
I've been thinking a lot about doing it, just didn't come around and actually prepare everything because it's not as easy as it sounds. I
right,
feel like you need to have some material done. You need to, register yourself, explaining the exercise, the drills, and it comes to coaching sprinting and track events because you really need to see them moving
yeah.
and finding those elements that can be adjusted. So not sure, but I'll think about it.
Awesome. Well, hey, Cora, it was a wonderful meeting you. Thank you so much for taking time out of
And
your
I'd love to
day
meet you again.
to spend with us. Thank you for your experience and your professionalism and everything else, and sharing your knowledge with us. And look forward to keeping in touch with you. I have tons. I could ask you 1,000 more questions because what you do is in a lot of ways what I do. We're doing the same kind of stuff, have the same kind of, the periodization and the stuff that we're talking about. I'm like, okay, we're simpatico there, And I didn't tell you
Which is
this.
good.
My father's name was Mike Fantaconi. He passed away 10 years ago, but I'm like,
I
my
love
grandfather's name was Carmine Fantaconi. So my dad is Michael Fantacone. So I am my grandfather was supposedly 100% Italian. So I'm either
There we go.
25 or something like that. So I have never been to Italy yet, but I'm dying to go and
You should.
touch base with my roots because my mom's side is Polish.
Yeah.
Yeah, Polish and Italian.
And there we go.
So
Then
quite
you
a
could
mix,
totally do a little trip, Italy
right?
and Poland.
There you go.
Done.
There you go. I got a plan.
That's it.
All right. Well, thank you again, Cora. Best of
It was
luck.
great to meet you.
Nice meeting you. Best of luck with your new business in Canada. And if there's anything I can do to
Thank you
help
so
promote
much.
you, anything I can do to help promote you and help you in any way, just send me a DM and let's see if we can do something. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank
It was
you.
lovely to talk to you.
Nice talking with you as well. Thanks again. All right. Bye-bye. Patriarca. She is originally from Italy, was living and training, working with her clientele in Sydney, Australia, and is now just changing tack completely, wants a new challenge, and is moving her business up to Canada. Didn't find out which part of Canada, but she's doing a great job there and is going to continue doing great work up in Canada. We heard about her background as a heptathlete and working with many different types of athletes from track and field to soccer and rugby and stuff like that. So we wish her the best and be following along and seeing how she's doing and checking in from time to time. But until then, that finishes up today. This is Thursday, January 18th. I'm your host, Troy Haines, formerly a UCLA high jumper and now creeping up as being an old man. I'm a young old man. I'm going to be 60 here in a month. I'm pretending that number doesn't exist. But anyway, we will be talking to you soon for another episode of Raise the Bar. Look forward to my rant uh, podcasts coming up. I'm not sure what I'm ranting about soon, but I know I'm going to be going on one, and we'll be doing a couple of those. I'm also trying to get a podcast with Dontavius Hill, the young man from the University of Auburn, who is a 7'4", I believe, high jumper and has quite a following on Instagram. Finally was able to pin him down. I haven't pinned him down yet, but we've had multiple talks, and he's still trying to find a place to come get me in there. So hopefully we can get that done. So until next time, Troy Haines signing off. Another episode of Raise the Bar. Have a good one.